andre etasje.
Cycling in Norway was one of the best experiences of my life. After flying into Oslo, I rented a car, a room for the night, and a gravel bike. The next morning, I set out 6 hours northwest for Grutli. I started the route out from a cabin I rented at a campground on Route 15, about 5.5 miles east of Grutli, here. At Grutli, the route takes a left-hand turn onto a beautiful, historic, scenic route called Gamla Strandfjellveien, or otherwise known and more pronounceable to Americans as Route 258. This route stretches 27 kilometers or 17 miles through a mountain valley. It has glacial views and crystal clear, deep teal blue lakes. It was built in the late 1800s by hand and first opened in 1894. It closes every year from October to June and can only be ridden in the summer months. And possibly one of its best features is that because it's designated as a national tourist route, it has weight restrictions and length restrictions on vehicles since 2019. And what that means is you'll see other cyclists and you'll see motor vehicles and some camper vans, but what you won't see are the tour buses that clog up a lot of the tourist routes. And therefore, you can enjoy a peaceful, scenic ride through an iconic Norwegian valley. Day 1 covered 46 miles and ended in Spain. I started the day out from the campground and rode west to Grutli, where I took 258, 17 miles through the valley, to the point where it rejoined Route 15 and continued from the highest point of 3,700 feet all the way down to sea level. And I ended the day here at this campground. On day 2, I plan to continue around the north side of the lake to a town named Flo, where I would pick up a narrow farm road that turns into a hiking trail and would take me through the mountain pass to the town of Hillesil, where I would catch a ferry through the fjord to Geiranger. Day 2 starts out socked in with fog, but the air is crisp and I've got the whole day in front of me. road ended at Flow, and all that's left is this farm road that continues up into the mountain. This is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. As I gained a little bit of altitude, the mountains with the glaciers just started emerging out of the fog below me. If I had to pick a favorite day of the bike trip, I would choose day 2. It had the most varied scenery, the most varied riding, the most excitement. There were steep paved uphill switchbacks until I got north of Flow. When I reached the trailhead, there was a section of 1.5 to 2 miles where I had to hike the bike up some loose gravel and steep grades until I reached the mountain pass where it flattened out. I passed by some wonderful mountain lakes. I saw about a dozen remote cabins up there with some families visiting for the weekend just to relax or to do some repairs. The trail in sections was technical. It narrowed down to single track. There were no tourists, no tour buses, just other cyclists, some hikers. It was phenomenal. As I descended out of the mountains, it was smooth sailing all the way down to Hellesilt, where I arrived in plenty of time to catch the ferry from Hellesilt over to Geiranger. The ferry covers 9.5 miles through a fjord designated as a World Heritage Site, providing views of plunging waterfalls cascading over 1,300 feet down into the waters below. And there is no sight so stunning as rounding a bend to see the village of Geiranger nestled in the mountains before you. After briefly exploring the tourist shops of Geiranger, I put a good dent in the next 5 miles of steep 7% grade that would eventually, on day 3, get me to Dalsnitma. I spent the night at a cute little campground where the cozy bed was a welcome sight for a weary traveler. Even before I opened my eyes on day 3, I could hear the wind howl. Day 3 is the big climb. There are 8 miles to the peak of Dalsnibba, which is at 4,800 feet elevation. The first 6 are 7% grade, and the last 2 are 10% grade. That's the peak I have to get to. I have 5.5 miles left. About 2,400 feet to go up. And we've got a really gusty wind that was not forecast. So it blows me over sometimes. A little maintenance building that I'm gonna hide out behind momentarily while I put on some extra layers. I had made it to the final stretch, last 2 miles, and the grade changes to 10%. All the way to the peak, so I was pushing my bike because I didn't have it in me to stay upright anymore. And as I was plodding along, a bus pulls up, a tour bus full of people from Holland. And the bus driver opens the door and he says, "Hey, you want to ride?" And seeing as how I was just going to push my bike to the top, I thought, well, why not? But I asked, but where's my bike gonna go? And he said, "That's no problem." And a whole bus full of Hollanders jumped off, and they just dragged my bike right up into the tour bus and brought me up with them. The whole bus full, hooting and hollering, and they gave me hot coffee, and that's how I met a bus driver named Fritz, who they call a crazy Dutchman. It was an easy 20-mile ride back to my starting point to complete 98 miles of cycling in Norway.